Hi, I'm your kid critic Jack Mooney, and welcome to the Jack Mooney Show. And in today's video, I will be counting down the top 5 worst movies of summer 2019. With today being September 1st, I thought I'd look back on a rather disappointing summer. So, in fifth place is a smaller movie called Yesterday. Now, I was actually kind of looking forward to Yesterday with an interesting premise that one day primarily everybody knows who the Beatles are, and then the next only one person knows. So I thought that that was rather interesting and an interesting approach with the kind of music movie craze going on right now with like Rocket Man and Bohemian Rhapsody. So I thought it was an interesting idea. But after seeing it, it does feel like a typical rom com. Nothing special there. Danny Boyle, who has done films like 127 Hours, Steve Jobs, Slumdog Millionaire, he really lacks a direction here, and it just feels like a basic movie. There's no indication that he is bringing forth his talent that he has shown before, so it just really feels like I'm watching something, not experiencing something. And then the script by Richard Curtis really felt lifeless to me. Nothing creative. They try to like say, oh, other than the Beatles, some people don't know what. Well, actually, everybody doesn't know what Coca-Cola is or Harry Potter, and I just thought that was a really silly addition to the film. I really never got to experience what these characters were going through. I never got to feel that the emotions that I was expecting to, especially if nobody else knows what the Beatles are. So I was rather disappointed. In my opinion, it's the fifth worst movie of the summer. I kind of forgot that this movie came out this year, but Child's Play was definitely a very disappointing film for me. It started off actually rather interesting. It was almost like a black comedy. It was taking a comedic approach to Chucky and the horror element, and I kind of enjoyed that. It was a little silly, but I was having fun with it. But then, as the movie progressed, I began to notice that there was probably trouble with the production of the film. The editing seemed a little choppy, scenes seemed to be missing, and the development of the characters, especially Andy and Andy's friends, it just seemed to be lacking. And I definitely, I wish that we had an extra 20, 30 minutes to develop these characters because it seemed to be moving really, really fast. And at the end of the film, when there's this huge climactic scene, there wasn't any emotional payoff for me to care because the beginning didn't set up the characters well enough. So it was definitely pretty disappointing, and I hate it when there's a huge like end battle fight scene and I don't really care and I just want to leave, which was the case with this. But there's definitely some fun Chucky kills in this movie, but definitely rather disappointing. It had a great cast though, Aubrey Plaza and Brian Tyree Henry. They did a great job, but just the writing and the directing, I didn't really feel it from this one. I was pretty disappointed. So Child's Play number 4. I've never been a huge fan of the Fast and Furious franchise. I always find them a bit ridiculous, and I never really enjoy them as much as a lot of other action fans do. But something was kind of intriguing about this movie because it looked so absurd, so stupid, and it looked like it was going to be a great time at the movies. It almost looked through the trailers a little Mission Impossible like, so that also intrigued me as well. But this is not a masterpiece like Mission Impossible Fallout, which came out last year and was one of my favorite movies. It seemed like this was pointless and there wasn't a clear purpose to making this. It was really joyless, and there was no part of the film that I like enjoyed and enjoyed watching it because throughout the film I was like, when's this going to be over? Um, the action I thought was boring in a way. Unlike John Wick, which did some really cool stuff with the action, I thought the action here seemed pretty typical, bad CGI, and yeah, it just didn't seem like what was going on. I could have cared less about. The story was way too complicated than it needed to be. The jokes were so forced, not funny at all. And yeah, it's ridiculous. And I hated the Meg last year, and maybe this just isn't my kind of movie. The movies Statham and The Rock make, but I did like Rampage and San Andreas, so I don't know. I just expected more from the director too, especially after doing Deadpool 2, and I love that movie. I just wish I got something more. Maybe because they spoiled a lot of the movie in the trailers, but yeah, I was not a huge fan of Hobbs and Shaw. If you like these kind of movies, you'll probably enjoy it, but for me, I couldn't stand it. I was really disappointed by The Kitchen, especially from its DC Vertigo source material. I was expecting a raw and gritty crime movie. Through the trailers, it felt like very similar to a Scorsese project, and that made me very excited for this, especially with the female empowerment side to it. I really wanted to see this movie, especially with the cast too. It from the trailers, it looked like it had a great cast, but after seeing it, yes, this is one of the biggest disappointments of the year. The cast just can't pull it off, and I think they could have if they had a better director and a better script to work with. I think Tiffany Haddish gives the worst performance of the entire year. I think it's laughable how serious she tries to be in this movie, and it comes across so funny. And I feel bad too because she's a great comedian, but through the horrible script and the direction that does not seem to be present, she wasn't able to pull off her character. There's just a lot of laughable things that go on in this movie. The editing's bad, the pacing's bad, and you're just watching and you're like, what's going on? Like, what's the purpose of this movie? A movie's supposed to have a purpose. There's no purpose with The Kitchen. Um, the score isn't great. The cinematography isn't great. The only good thing about this movie is Bill Camp. I think Bill Camp is one of the best actors working today. So he did a phenomenal job with this movie. But everything else was just so disappointing. Yeah, I really expected more. I love gangster movies, um, and the approach they were taking with this, I was pretty excited for it. But The Kitchen, I don't recommend it. It pains me to say this because I've been rooting for Dark Phoenix since day one when I heard about it, but it is the worst movie that I've seen this summer. Um, you know, the good of the movie, it is. There are some visually stunning scenes. I think the CGI is pretty good, especially when she becomes the Phoenix. And the space scene at the beginning isn't so bad visually. And I'd also say like the first 20-ish minutes, they're not bad. They're not good either, but they're watchable. It's on the standards of Apocalypse, I would say. But then I'd say when Jean goes to find Magneto and Jessica Chastain's character starts to have a presence, and you notice how unnecessary she is. You really understand how unnecessary this movie is, and that you get to see the troubled production, and you realize like, should this movie even been made? What was the point of like telling a story that's been told before, The Last Stand, and failed at, and this time it's being failed at even worse. Speaking of The Kitchen being laughable, this movie is pretty laughable. I think Ty Sheridan as Cyclops gives the most laughable line of the year, uh, saying "fuck" something. I forgot how he said it, but it was so bad. The ending is so bad. The train scene, oh my god, it was atrocious. Just this whole movie, it was an embarrassment to be a part of it. I assume, and it lost a lot of money. I actually find some enjoyment that Disney had a bomb this year. So yeah, um, Dark Phoenix was really bad, and it stinks. But it's the worst of the summer. I'm the kid critic Jack Mooney, but coming soon is my personal favorite movies of the summer. So thank you for watching The Worst.